thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
So talk to me a little bit about, what role AI and machine learning ultimately plays in the payment space.
Um, AI and machine learning actually is revolutionizing a lot of areas. And in the payment space, there are a few areas where they are already used heavily, and mostly regarding fraud detection, for example, as well as various kinds of threat detections in terms of security. In terms of fraud, if one could essentially look at a lot of data in a very short amount of time, especially when a transaction is being executed. Think of an online payment transaction being executed, and if looking at the data, one could identify the fraud as it's happening, so you don't even complete the transaction. What that means is you can reduce the false positives and improve user experience, and also help the bottom line of the company performing the transaction. And this essentially requires looking at thousands of data items in real time, within maybe a 200 to 300 millisecond period, but also make some changes to the database as the transaction is happening, so a subsequent transaction can now be matched against what happened just now.
So how will AI and ML ultimately unlock more value for customers?
One of the things about AI and ML is it allows the real-time monitoring of user behavior and the ability to make decisions in real time which are more accurate. So what typically happens is one looks at a lot of activities that have happened over time and analyzes it, using analytics tools and so on, generate models of what should be happening in real time, and then apply the model in real time as the events are unfolding. And the more accuracy with which one can make a particular determination in terms of identifying a threat or figuring out fraud, you can immediately impact the business the business objectives, so to speak, in terms of both the top line, in terms of you keep more revenue that you actually make, you don't make bad transactions. All of that happens in real time, day in and day out.
And what role will customer experiences play with the future of banking and financial services?
One of the most important things that I think it's happening in the US, but it's also happened in other parts of the world like India and China, is people have a relationship to payment systems which are a lot more personal these days from their mobile devices, but also they do it several times during the day, every day. Now, as financial services, companies which have been around for potentially hundreds of years, at least 100 years or more, they have a lot of existing customers, but the new generation of customers are used to a different way of operating with these companies. And this is somewhere, I think, this is some place where there's a huge opportunity for all the large companies to kind of bridge the gap to create new kinds of interactions with customers.
And in what ways will this ultimately create, more economic value for customers?
I mean, one way is essentially you can now use the amount in your bank account directly. Think of, for example, a use case we have been involved with in Europe, where small euro transactions can now be kind of transferred from one European account to another of the sort of a few euros. The cost of such a transaction needs to be in a fraction of a euro cent. So once you make it so easy for people to transfer 24/7 small amounts to anybody, and the money directly comes out of their bank account, you just reduce a lot of friction in terms of setting up secondary wallets and other tertiary systems, and also make it more likely for everybody to use it.
And how has Aerospike specifically adjusted to account for these consumer demands ultimately?
I mean, to some extent, Aerospike is a database which builds, which provides the ability to deliver very high throughput, low latency transactions. while also providing infrastructure kind of implementation pieces which enable us to run it 24/7, typically on clouds or on multiple data centers and so on. The most important thing that Aerospike does in terms of the applications that use us is the reliability that the system provides, so that essentially anybody running such a system can sleep at night, so to speak, while all of the customers are using it, because you cannot afford a loss of service, and also you cannot afford a reduction in customer experience. So both of those Aerospike can do while keeping the TCO, or the cost of ownership, low enough that you can now deploy it at scale.
Great. Well, Srini, thank you so much for your insights. This has been excellent.
Thank you, Shannon. It's been a pleasure.
From Medici Studio, I'm Shannon Rossick.